Alright, this is John Cole with GrowingYourGreens.com through another exciting episode for you. And where I am today in the world is Salt Lake City, Utah here. I'm here downtown in Salt Lake City and I was actually driving by this community garden right here actually. And I was like, man, that place looks familiar. And actually, for those of you guys that are long-term viewers, you guys will know that actually I was at this community garden, I don't even know how many years ago, maybe it was like 2000 and I don't know what. But man, it was a long time ago and I remember the sculptures and stuff. And I visited this. So yeah, for those of you guys that have been watching me since then and remember seeing this episode, hey, thumbs up, man, to you guys. That's great. I want to thank you guys, all my viewers, for your guys' support and all this kind of stuff. Anyways, today's episode, I thought, I just love coming back to community gardens I've been to kind of see how things are growing, seeing what's up. I'll post a link down below to that original video I made back here many years ago. I can't remember how many years ago now, but it seemed like it was pretty new at the time, because I don't get to Salt Lake City much. But anyways, what I thought I'd do in this episode is actually share with you guys what's growing on, or not growing on actually at this point. Pretty much, Salt Lake City had their first frost already, maybe a light frost, and the farmers markets already have ended here for the summer season. They're getting into the winter markets here, and so pretty much it's the end of the season. So I want to show you guys actually in the garden, the community garden here, what grew the best. So if you live in Salt Lake City, these are maybe some of the things you will want to grow for next season that'll do really well, perform well, and even perform after the traditional summer growing season ends. In addition, at the tail end of this video, what I thought I'd do, because I know a lot of you guys are in the same predicament now where it's the end of your season, you want to know, John, what do I do with my raised beds? So I'm going to share with you guys my opinions on maybe what people should do in the community garden to get their beds ready for next year, or to keep it basically to overwinter their beds if they're not going to be growing. So anyways, let's go ahead and head into the community garden and check it out. So this is the Wasatch Community Garden. It's the People's Portable Garden here, and established in 2009. It'd be interesting to see when I was actually here. I think it was close to that time actually. And I'm glad that this is an open community garden. Many places that I go to in the country, like I go to a community garden and check it out, the gates are locked, man, and you can't get in unless you know somebody that's farming on the inside, or somebody happens to be there. So I'm glad that this is open for people, but at the same time, I hope that people would respect other people's gardens, OPG, other people's gardens, and not like pick stuff. And say they have signs, please respect the garden, and don't take anything from the garden. The garden is closed from dusk till dawn. Keep this area organic and pest free. So those are some of the rules. In addition, they got this like little produce crate right here taped to the, strap to the fence, which is I think a nice idea. And inside, what am I finding? I'm finding some tomatoes, that could be riper. These would be good for fried tomatoes or something. I don't know, if you're starving, maybe it'd be good. I think that's great, to have an area to donate people, or donate food to people in the area that may need it. And because there's always extra abundance in the garden, especially when you're planting, so much. So anyways, let's head into this community garden and show you guys what's growing on today. So what you guys are looking at behind me is one of the many community garden plots here. I think they're maybe like 4 foot by, I don't know, looks like maybe 16, 20 feet wide. So you would rent these out, I guess, for the season. And everybody has something a little bit different growing in each one. And this is probably pretty much at this time, which is near the end of the season, what one of the beds looks like. The tomatoes have kind of, gone the way of the west. Some of them are, messed up. And over on this side, we got like squash that is probably pretty much no longer making it. Some of them actually have powdery mildew, and a lot of plants and debris in here are brown and probably need to be pulled out and then composted, right? And so that's just pretty much what's happening here for most plants, but there's some plants that are the stars. So I want you guys always to pick out the stars in your garden. Basically the plants that perform well over the entire season, and focus a good percentage of what you grow, the stars, the ones that produce reliably for you. And that's what I'm going to do in this episode, is point out some of the stars here in Salt Lake City and the plants that did some of the best, which actually are not a big surprise to me. Some of the ones that do really well for me as well, and they'll probably do good for you to grow also. All right, so where I've taken you guys first is plot number 21. So if your name's Joey, you're featured on my video, man. So yeah, this is Joey's plot. I like that they have a little sign on every plot who it's rented by. This is Joey's plot, and actually on this side of the garden, he's planting some crops that have done really well over the season. So basil. no surprise to me that the basil has done quite well here. Now this has gone to full flower and seed, and so when that happens, you know, the production goes down, so it'd be good to, you know, maybe like clip back all the flowers at this point, since it's gonna frost probably any day now. It's probably not worthwhile to do that, but you could get at least another harvest of all the, you know, leaves and the little flowers off it, and just the plain leaves. And so that'd be good to preserve. You know, one of the best ways to preserve your basil so you could have it into the winter is freeze it in ice cubes, because basil, especially when you dry it, it loses some of the aromatics. Not too good, but if you freeze it in ice cubes, also you can basically cure it in salt. So like harvest your basil and basically get a big bowl and line the bottom with some salt, and then put leaves of basil on there, like a whole layer of leaves of basil, then line it with more salt, and then keep layering the basil and the salt on top of each other to fill the whole bowl. That's another way to you know, ensure you guys could have some basil through the winter when you're not growing it. Of course, you could also take cuttings of your basil and grow them inside in the winter. But yeah, basil really did well here in the garden in Salt Lake. Another one right next door, doesn't surprise me either. The rosemary. Rosemary is another herb that does really well here. And you know, there's a few other herbs that I'm maybe not going to show you in this episode that did well. Like, let's see, the mints look like they did pretty well, and some of the sages that I saw around did well as also, you know. And I always want to encourage you guys to grow some herbs. They're not only nutrition, you know, really power-packed nutrition for you guys with high antioxidants, but they make your food taste good without the salt. Another vegetable behind, I don't know if you guys can see that, is back there, done pretty good. I think he's like maybe the only guy that grew okra in this whole garden that I saw. The okra, man, it's still performing. I mean, yeah, some of the stuff he should have like harvested and used the pods, but right now he could harvest some of the seed. And there's even new small little baby okras starting to grow. Once again, like the basil, you want to try to keep all your okra pods clipped off so that it keeps producing, you know, the new pods for you guys to eat. Yeah, and this looks like it did pretty well, and it's still growing. The other thing that's pretty much apparent, that like, you know, walking and checking out this community garden, to me, and this is just my opinion on this, right, because I don't really know what's going on here, is that, and this happens a lot in gardening, you know, people get really excited about the spring, right, and they plant the community garden plot, they're really into it, they keep coming back and all this stuff, and then near the end of the season, like, the interest fizzles out. And I want you guys to keep your interest high the full season long, especially if your garden isn't right outside your backyard like mine is, you know. I mean, it can get hard. We all get busy in life, you know, and especially during the hot summer, you might not want to go to the community garden. But you know, if you plant the right things, like some of the things that I'm talking about in this episode, you could have food from your community garden. So I mean, I know you guys go to the grocery store regularly, so especially if you have a community garden plot that's like not near you, go to your community garden plot to shop first, right? It's apparent to me that by walking around, I'm seeing a lot of unharvested food. And if somebody's not harvesting the food from the community garden, that means they're buying it at the grocery store. And I'd much rather have you guys eat the food out of your community garden plot, or your garden in your backyard, your front yard, wherever you have it, instead of the grocery store, because this will allow you to buy less food, to save more money, to have a higher quality food, to have food that tastes better, to have food that's more nutritious, right? So yeah, I don't know how to motivate people to go to their community garden plots more than just that, and hopefully people retain the interest more, all right? So anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at a few more vegetables that have grown really well this season. So I was walking by this bed on the way to some vegetables, and I just had to stop for you guys, because here's some more herbs, right? And these herbs are also growing really well here. Includes oregano that's actually going to flower in mass quantity. So if you don't want them to flower, you know, clip them back, they'll keep growing for you. In the middle here, we have a big ball of sage, like huge ball of sage. It probably takes up like maybe a quarter of the raised bed. It's kind of insane. And to me, it doesn't look like they're really using it a lot, right? And then also on the other side of the sage, you guys can't see, they got the thyme. You got the money, honey, I got the thyme. Or actually, I'm growing thyme, and they're growing thyme too. Once again, you know, I want to encourage you guys to grow some herbs, but also, especially if you have a small raised bed and this is all your gardening space, right? I would encourage you guys to use your space wisely. As much as I would like to dedicate like a small portion to the herbs, you know, and this bed looks like it's mostly herbs. And that'd be great if you're using it and you're like doing something with your herbs, but it looks to me like they're just not really using the herbs so much. and you know, that kind of makes me sad. So yeah, I don't know, make herb potpourri and stuff and put in your bathroom and all the rooms of your house. Hang sprigs of sage up in your house to make it smell nice and stuff. You know, put some dried sage, branches and oregano in your drawers with your clothes so you're gonna smell like a hippie. But use it, man. Use it before you lose it, because with the frost, man, this stuff is gonna be flattened. So the first vegetable I want to share with you guys today is actually these guys right here. And these are beans that are still producing despite the looming frost. You know, around in this garden I've seen other kind of beans and peas growing, but some of them may have powdery mildew and some of them may be looking like they're not doing so well. But this plant is a fighter because it's a native, more wild heirloom crop that's been grown here in North America since before the white man came, right? These are Native American runner beans. And check this out. I don't know if you guys can see this over here. I'll try to like bring it over. But this plant is still basically producing flowers right now and producing little baby pods. So, you know, it's this kind of plant that will, you know, may produce for a long season. Of course, it depends also. It likes a more mild temperature. So like, you know, in 100+ degree weather on a regular basis, it may not perform in the heat of the summer, but once it cools down, it will start performing again. But if you live in a place that's like maybe mostly in the 80s, maybe sometimes in the 90s, might tip into 100 sometimes, and it's not consistent, then it'll produce all season long for you guys, like it has for me. And you know, these little small baby beans can be eaten like the sugar snap peas. They're quite delicious. And when the pods get much more mature, like maybe some of these guys, they're gonna dry out, and then you could harvest and save the seeds. And then you could eat the beans or the seeds inside. Of course, you could also share them with friends. The other cool thing about the Native American runner beans that I found out, you know, depending on your climate, if you cut them back at the end of the season, you mulch it heavily, keep the root zone warm, right? It might just come back for you next year and be a perennial style crop. So my plants have come back for many years, and at some point usually I lose them, but you know, they are a long lasting crop. So I do like that a lot because it makes it a lot less work for me to grow them. And if you're looking to get this plant, I still might have seeds available depending on when you're seeing this. So you want to visit my website, growingyourgreens.ecwid.com. That's a seed store that my girlfriend is taking care of all the fulfillment and all that stuff, because I don't have the time to do that. So I'm glad she's doing that, because she still, you know, doesn't really quite have a job and kind of needs money. So when she sells the seeds, that's the money she gets to pay her all our insurance and car payments and all our bills and all this kind of stuff. So thanks for you guys' support for helping my girlfriend out, and also, you know, being able for me to spread out the seeds to you guys. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at a few more crops that are doing good here in Salt Lake City. So the next two vegetables that I want you guys to grow, whether you grow here in Salt Lake City or most places that pretty much do well no matter where you live, are these two guys right here. Number one, of course, these guys. This is the dinosaur kale, or lacinato kale, black kale, Tuscan kale, so many different words for it. But basically, as you guys can see, this thing is huge. Look at that. I mean, this is like a little kale tree right there. And you know, kale is all the rage, right? It's one of the most nutritious of vegetables. The kale is actually anti-cancerous, and it makes me sad when I come to a community garden and I see this much kale still hanging out on the plant. Now this might be a good thing, because this gardener may know that this kale will survive some light frosts, and actually when the frosts come, the kale gets sweeter. So typically I don't like to eat kale in the middle of the summer. The flavor gets kind of more intense and strong, and you know, I don't like that so much. You know, I'll eat my summer greens that really do well in the summer, that really love the heat and are more mild. But come the winter, once it starts to get cold, right, the plant puts more sugars into the leaves to help it prevent itself from getting frosted or from freezing, right? And then when you eat it, it's more sweet and delicious. Of course, you can make things like, you know, kale salads. You can mix, you know, half kale with half lettuce. You could actually cook up the kale. But my favorite way to use the kale is either by juicing it, blending it in a smoothie. So a little bit of kale with some frozen bananas, some coconut water. Amazing smoothie. Add more bananas if the kale taste is too strong. And then of course, my other favorite way to use the kale is to make the kale chips. You know, that can get quite expensive if you go to buy them in the store. A 2-ounce bag at a health food store is gonna run you maybe $5 for some kale chips, but especially if you have unlimited kale, man, you should turn them all into kale chips, and I guarantee you'll eat them. Be sure to check my past episodes. If I remember, I'll put a link down below to an episode I did making kale chips myself, so you guys can see how I do it. Let's see, another leafy green that's done really well, and I want you guys to eat your leafy greens, man. My goal every day to eat 2 pounds of leafy greens. A little bit more challenging when I'm traveling. But the Swiss chard leaves here also looks like something that's done really well and is done, you know, well in most places that I visit. So I think there's an Elton John song that goes, "I'm still standing," and I don't know the rest of the melody, but anyways, you can see the corn here. I mean, it's still standing, but it's all dried up, not so doing so good. But right here in front of me, as you guys can see, there's a huge, nice, huge bunch of the green onions. And it looks like the green onions has done well. Looks like it's gone to flower and seed. They've cut some of it back, and you know, still producing lots of green onions. Now, you know, green onions, you might not eat a lot of them, like you might eat more kale, but you might eat more tomatoes than kale or green onions. But I want to encourage you guys to, you know, just clip back a couple sprigs of green onions each and every day and include them as a flavoring agent in your dinners, right? I want you guys to eat green onions every day. The main reason for this is because it's an anti-cancer plant, much like other plants in the allium family, which includes the onion and the garlic. And actually the onion greens are more nutritious for you than the whole onion bulb that is normally bought. So I like to just take a couple sprigs and just chop it up really fine, throw it in my salad, throw it in my soup for flavoring. Plus I'm getting the anti-cancer boost. As you guys know, to buy some green onions could cost you $1 a bunch in the store, and having it, if you just plant one plant, you'll have it probably for the whole summer season. And of course, at the end of the season, before it goes bad, right, you can clip it all back, chop it in little pieces, dehydrate it, and have dehydrated onions to use in the winter when you don't have your fresh plants. Of course, green onions are also another really easy thing to grow in your kitchen in the winter time. So the last vegetable I want to share with you guys to grow that did better than some of the other ones here are actually the tomatoes. And I know, tomatoes are the number one planted home vegetable crop that people love to plant. Everybody always thinks, grow your own tomatoes, and I definitely agree, tomatoes that you home grow taste way better than ones from the store. But even within that, there are certain varieties that'll do better or worse in your area, and you're gonna have to figure that out for yourselves. But in general, my general recommendation for tomatoes, and it looks like the whole tree right here also, is to grow the smaller cherry tomatoes, right? Here's some cherry tomatoes. I don't know exactly what variety, but you guys can see, even impending the first frost, they're still ripening up and they're gonna be good. They do have also other tomatoes. I don't know if you guys can see these guys that are nice and huge, and these green tomatoes will never fully ripen up properly before the frost because it's gonna take a while. But these smaller ones, they kind of grow faster, they ripen and mature quicker, so you're gonna have, more tomatoes over your full season. And I'm good with cherry tomatoes. One of my favorite varieties is the black cherry tomato. And even though it's, some of their plants are kind of turning, cucumbers, getting kind of some disease and stuff here, these tomatoes are quite doing well. Another tip I want to share with you guys before the first frost, don't let the first frost happen and then do this, because then it's not going to work. But if you do this before the first frost, you may be able to salvage some of your tomatoes. So even some of the tomatoes that are still green before the first frost, just harvest them with the stems and all, and keep them, in like a box in a cool, dry place, not in the rain, maybe like inside your house somewhere. And these guys, if they're at the certain stage of ripeness, will turn red for you. Not that they're gonna taste good because you picked them early and they're still ripening. They're never gonna have the full flavor, but they'll still be edible. And of course, many people still use their green tomatoes for eating. I personally wouldn't do that myself. But, oh yeah, and then of course all the ripe ones, enjoy them now, or, I encourage you guys to dehydrate them and save them for the winter. So after walking the community garden a few times and sharing with you guys the vegetables that did the best, I think I pretty much covered them all. If you have vegetables that do really well for you, hey, please post them down below to let other people know so that people could try those varieties as well. I want to encourage people, wherever you live, is to always increase the amount of varieties and increase the genetic diversity so you grow because this is the way we can learn and grow. You'll plant new varieties of this or that or some different leafy green vegetable you never heard of from one of the seed catalogs. One of the good sources of seeds here is mvseeds.com. That's Mountain Valley Seeds. Most of those seeds are high altitude seeds. They're going to do really well here in the short season. So yeah, that's very important. But other than that, I mean, that's pretty much the end of this video. But before I go, I want to share with you guys what many of you guys are going through or already went through for this year is at the end of the season, and you got all the plants that are kind of like looking messed up. They got white powdery mildew and they're drying out and they're just not looking too good. What do you do, right? So what I like to do is simply this, number one, I'll cut all the plants down. And what I'm doing these days is actually I'm cutting them down at the base. So I'm leaving all the root matter in the soil. I'm not pulling up the root matter unless they get in the way of my crop that I'm going to plant next go around in that raised bed. Why am I doing this, right? This is so I could adhere more to the no-till gardening and disturb the soil less, and also so that I can feed the microbes, also the earthworms and their creatures in the bed. So I'm just cutting off the root zone, leaving it in there. It's gonna compost in place. And this is especially true if you live in a place that actually, you're not growing in the winter time. So once you clear your space of all the top growth, you leave the roots under the ground, then the next thing I would do to prepare for the next growing season, or in this case the dormant growing season, is this raised bed here. Most raised beds, the level of the soil will sink down over the season. So this raised bed looks like it's sunk down at least 6 inches. So what I would like to do is minimum put 3 inches of good amended compost on top of this raised bed before doing anything else. So I'd add things like the rock dust, add things like the worm castings, maybe some of the different John and Bob's fertilizers, of course, things like the soil humates, maybe like also, frass, and just a nice rich mixture of different compost mixed with other nutrients to just basically put over the top. This way, the biologic activity of the soil could start breaking this stuff down and getting it ready for your next growing season, whenever that may be. And in my case, I top off my beds and then I plant in it for the next growing season because I grow year round. And growing year round is simply the best thing you guys could do. Now in a place like Salt Lake City here, where I'm looking up in the mountains, I'm already seeing snow up there, right? Probably to grow year round would be a lot more challenging, but it can be done. Building some kind of hoop house over this would probably allow it to stay warm enough to grow some crops that are frost tolerant, such as, maybe some collard greens or some kale, right? Some of the cold crops are quite frost tolerant and will deal with frost. Of course, other things like the allium or onion family will also, many of them will do well as well also. So you guys can still be growing food even in the winter with a covering over it with some plastic on there to keep it warmer on the inside. And that's my first recommendation, is to always keep something growing in your soil, right? Now, second best, if you're not gonna grow edibles in your soil, then minimum maybe spread out some seeds to grow some cover crops over the winter if your climate allows you to do that. I know some places just will have snow on the ground and not really gonna do too many cover crops with snow on the ground if it's there consistently. The final thing I would do if you're not gonna do those other 2 choices is I would actually cover the soil surface at a bare minimum, right? So don't leave your raised beds bare with just dirt that you could look at. It's like us walking, outside with no clothes on. And unless you're, a naturalist or whatever, or a hippie, you're probably not gonna do that. We're all gonna put clothes on before we go outside because we don't wanna be bare, right? And our soils don't wanna be bare either. And so I would encourage you guys to cover your soils in the wintertime like they're doing here. I mean, they put, just some straw here to cover the soil. Now I'd probably put a deeper layer of straw on there, and whether you're gonna use some kind of straw or whether you're gonna use some kind of leaves or whether you're gonna use some kind of wood chips, I don't really care. Or even if you don't have all those organic matters, which is what I would prefer, cover it with a tarp or a piece of plastic. I mean, that's the last resort, but cover the damn soil, man. That's very important in my opinion, you know, to keep the microbiology and the activity of all the microbes, fungi, and earthworms active, because, you know, they don't like the bare open soil that, you know, exposes it to the elements, especially in the winter time. And then you're going to basically let that stuff decompose and protect the soil over the winter. It's going to decompose, break down a little bit depending on your climate and whatnot. And then when you're ready to plant out the next growing season, you're going to basically scratch back all the stuff that didn't degrade down. You may be able to top off your bed again with some more compost and make sure you get some fungal dominated compost in there. Very important. If you don't know what that is, check my other videos. Fungal dominated compost, very important. I would probably put as much of that stuff as you can in your garden because it's actually quite rare. And in my opinion, most gardens don't have enough fungal based compost or fungal activity to grow optimally well from my observations. But yeah, you're gonna scratch back all the stuff that's left over, compost that out, and then you're just gonna go ahead and replant for your next season. So that's how I would prepare, you know, my raised bed for the winter. That's what I would do. Of course, you know, hey, post your links down below or your ideas down below on what you guys do. You know, it'd be interesting to hear. But, you know, I always want to encourage you guys to cover your soil, keep your soil protected, you know, try to disturb your soil the least amount as possible, because this will raise the fertility of your soil and overall increase the way you're able to grow, increase the quality of the produce, increase the quantity of the produce, and, you know, make the produce more bug and disease resistant and build a nice healthy microbiome in your soil. And this is something that conventional farming and even organic farmers that still use tractors are simply not doing. And this is, you know, this is how nature works, you know, so this is nothing new. This is kind of trying to use nature to our advantage instead of work against it and try to think man is more intelligent than nature, because we were able to invent rototillers and we were able to invent tractors and we were able to invent, you know, all these chemical fertilizers, right? That's not the way. And I know a lot of you guys are really into your tilling and all this stuff, but hey, if you have a lot of beds that normally you would till up, you know, hey, try one or two the method I'm recommending you guys, and, you know, see what happens, right? Do an experiment. Oh, I'm just gonna try that crazy stuff that John says, you know, and see if it works. See what happens. See if my growing, you know, is better or worse in those beds than the ones that you tilled in. And, you know, I bet dollars of donuts that in time you'll see that your no-till beds will perform better. And that's just the feedback that I've seen in my personal garden and the feedback I've gotten from so many farmers that are doing the no-till method. So in any case, my time's come to an end here at the community garden in Salt Lake City. If you guys enjoyed this episode, want me to come back here and do more videos in Salt Lake, hey, please give me a thumbs up. I might get up here again. Also be sure to click that subscribe button right down below. I have new videos every 3 to 4 days, and if you subscribe, you'll get notified of new and upcoming videos, and that's one of the really best ways you guys can, you know, stay excited about gardening. I always try to excite you guys about gardening, about some aspect, but also teach you guys some stuff at the same time to keep you motivated, to keep you guys growing, because it's really important to me. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. My past episodes are a wealth of knowledge, especially in the winter time like we are now when you can't get out and garden. At least you could see me, hear me, and you know, learn from me from all the different gardens and places I've visited over the years. And I'll still, of course, be gardening year-round, and I want to encourage you guys to do that also if you're able to do that in your area. But minimum, grow some sprouts and microgreens so you guys can continue to grow inside your home in the winter. So once again, my name is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time. And until then, remember, keep on growing. All right, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, and we're here getting in finally to my end of my summer season. As you guys can see behind me, I still got lots of